40 Watters, welcome to this week's episode of 40 Watt Podcast. I'm really excited to share this one with y'all. This week I have John from Voltic. You're going to recognize some of his pedals. You've probably seen him on Instagram, Voltic Electronic Devices. He makes some really, really cool stuff. I've got one of his fuzzes here. I think you're going to enjoy this conversation. We talk about how he got started in music, the pedals that he offers. We talk about gatekeeping in music. It's really cool. He's got a perspective that I've not really gotten to experience a lot in the podcast. And the Patreon episode just goes further. We talk about New York jazz scene and some of the stuff and our love of different guitarists and the gatekeeping around genres. It's a good time. But before we get into that, I want to talk about a couple of things that are going on. First of all, I want to thank the sponsors of this podcast. Mark Turley over at Summer School Electronics, making some of the coolest pedals. He just had one of his new pedals at NAMM. You can check that out down at the links below. I appreciate his support. Additionally, as usual, Grez Guitars. Barry is making some of the raddest guitars. I just got to see him at the Woodwire and Volt event at Tangential to NAMM, where he had this mind-blowing new bass. Hopefully by now I've shared it on Instagram. If I haven't, go check out Grez Guitars Instagram. It's the semi-hollow, like Starfire meets a Gibson semi-hollow bass. Perfect. It's spectacular. I want one so bad, but I have no reason to spend that much money on a bass. Additionally, I want to thank Sweetwater for sponsoring all of the NAMM content. Sweetwater was good enough to sponsor our NAMM house this year. We had folks from 60 Cycle Hum, Cover Band Confidential, Pedal Playhouse, Guitar Dads Podcast, Landon Bailey, Henning Pauly. It was a wild time. We had a blast. And in celebration of that, Sweetwater is giving away a guitar. The link is below. I'm pointing down because that's where the links are, not for other reasons. You can click the links below or check it in the description. Giving away a Squier Classic Vibe Jaguar guitar. It's super cool. The giveaway is open until February 23rd. So if you're listening to this after February 23rd, I'm sorry it's closed. The link is probably still there because I'm not going to go back and remove it, but it's only good February 23rd, 2025. So click that link, enter for the giveaway. Thank you so much, Sweetwater, for sponsoring all of the NAMM content. And that's about it. We're going to get on into this episode. Thank you for coming and hanging out, and I hope you enjoyed this episode with John from Voltic. 40 Watters, welcome to this week's episode, 40 Watt Podcast. So happy to be with y'all again. This week, I am bringing another pedal builder on the podcast, y'all. I know I love talking to these lunatics. It's just what I do. This week, I have John at Voltic. John, how are you?
I'm doing great, Philip. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling great. Listeners, as we record this, if you listened to last week's episode, if it was the NAMM wrap-up episode, it should be. We're actually recording them out of order, but that's okay. I'm a little exhausted, still feeling the jet lag and the leaving NAMM exhaustion, which was a little less than a week ago as we record this. NAMM is not for the faint of heart, man.
So I hear.
Yeah, it is wild. And this year was massive. So yeah, I'm feeling good, getting through that. So how are you doing? Everything good? I know your life's been crazy too.
Yeah, things have been great over here. Also slowing down since the new year, which has been nice.
Yeah. So John, we met at Fretboard Summit, which is a phrase my listeners are getting used to hearing me say about people, because I'm telling y'all, if you are not going to Fretboard Summit, you are doing yourself a disservice. It is my favorite guitar gear community thing event, because it's not just gear, right? Like Fretboard Summit's like a bunch of performances. Yes, this is the free ad I'm giving them, that you should sign up and go to Fretboard Summit. But we met, we hung out. You were in the same room. Actually, you were in the room I spent the most time in, because it was not just you, but you like Brown Amps and Chase Bliss and Silk Tone, and I'm going to miss all of them, and Madsen Amps and AV8 and Summer School, and there's
And Chase Bliss.
I said Chase Bliss, and
Sife.
I think I did, and Sife Guitars. Yes.
also known as the best room at Fretboard
It
Summit.
really was. It what a great room. And that's not to slight Barry from Gress, who sponsors this podcast. It was in a different room. That other room was loud, and I avoided that room. So I think that's under control this year. It'll be a little different. So I'm really excited about it. But yeah, we got to hang out. We got to chat. I got to play a bunch of your pedals. I got to steal one of the picks you keep on your stand, which I still use literally every day. Thank you for using good picks at your pedal stand. But I wanted to get you on and tell more of your story because you're at least you're a relatively new name to me. I have no idea how long you've been doing this. We've been chatting on like Facebook and Instagram, and so I wanted to bring you on. Get everybody up to speed on who you are. How'd you get into guitar? How'd you get into music? And what made you decide to be a pedal building lunatic?
Sure. So I got into the whole music game probably later than most.
Mm-hmm.
So probably about 16 to 18 years old. One of my buddies for my birthday took me to see Blue Oyster Cult at our local community college. And the bass player Richie Castellano took like this crazy slap bass solo in the middle of it. And I was listening to Red Hot Chili Peppers and all that kind of stuff at the time, and so pretty immediately was like, I need to learn how to play bass.
See, that's immediately off the bat. Someone who starts at bass is a rare, rare bird because most of the time bassists are just frustrated guitar players.
Yeah, I still love playing bass. I'm mostly a guitar player now. So I gig out
Mm-hmm.
and record, and there's definitely plenty of situations where being able to play bass is a cool superpower, I find.
Being able to play it well is a great superpower. I used to also play a lot of bass. I considered myself a pretty proficient bass player, although the slap thing, like being proficient at slap, always eluded me. I could just do a little bit for the flavor, but I'd never work in the kitchen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But starting there is an interesting transition. So how long did you play bass before you got the guitar bug?
The guitar bug is actually still pretty relatively recent, I think. Probably been playing guitar seriously for three to 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and just kind of got it by nature of stopped playing bass for a minute, picked up more like acoustic guitar and banjo back there, and kind of got really into like tuba skinny and like music of like the 20s and 30s from New Orleans. So did a lot of that, and then just kind of I got asked to do a lot of like country guitar gigs, and so I bought a Telecaster, and then that's kind of where the guitar bug started. Bought all the Wampler pedals I could because he's like the country guitar pedal guy.
Yeah. I feel like he definitely has that reputation.
Yeah.
So I'm really interested. So banjo and now my listeners are a very erudite and cultured crew, so they will know. But we're going to talk about it for some of you that may be new to the podcast and aren't as hip. You say banjo nowadays, everyone instantly thinks country music,
Sure.
but like banjo had this massive home in the 1920s in blues and big band and ragtime and all the New Orleans music at the times. You get really, really into that. I used to have a banjo and I tried to play both styles and it was fun. And I actually gigged a couple of times with it, just, for a flavor kind of thing. But you still get a lot of banjo gigs. You still do a lot of 20 stuff.
When we first moved up to Philadelphia, there's like a pretty big 20s and 30s music community, so I was doing a lot of gigs pre-COVID. But my wife and I, we also go down to New Orleans probably about once or twice a year, and have a lot of friends down there. So I always bring the banjo and play at like Fritzl's and the Spotted Cat and DBA and all those sorts of places.
My favorite places.
Yeah.
Well, actually, DDA and Spotted Cat. I've never been to Fritzl's, actually, so I need to fix that.
Fritzl's is a great, you go there in the morning and you catch Richard playing solo stride piano and it'll just blow your mind.
That's the thing about New Orleans is there's so many cats down there playing that you're never going to hear of. There is a bar in New Orleans, and I'm trying to remember the name of it, listeners. That's for those of you watching. That's why I'm making this face. I'm trying really hard to remember. But I subscribe to their YouTube channel, and they live stream all of their shows to YouTube. So it's like Maple Leaf.
Maple Leaf Bar.
Yeah, Maple Leaf Bar.
Yeah.
So they live stream all their stuff. So I'm constantly catching. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes it's just kind of but sometimes it's some of the craziest, coolest music you're ever going to hear. And so like literally every night I get noticed, and they have 4 or 5 bands a night because that stage is getting rotated throughout the night.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm tuning in every so often. Every now and again, I'll just sit and listen to that for a couple of hours.
Yeah,
So,
man.
so you get down to New Orleans, but where are you from originally?
I'm originally from New York City, from Staten
Okay.
Island.
Yeah. So you grow up in New York, you learn bass, you get really into this 20s and 30s music, which obviously took hold in New York as well, way before either of us were ever born.
Yeah.
It became super popular up there. All right, so let's back up a little bit because we jumped some steps then if guitar is that relatively new. So you're playing bass. How long are you playing bass before you start deciding to what came first, guitar or building things?
Guitar came first.
Guitar came first. So the building things is really, really new to you.
Yeah, probably been building for about 2 years now. Yeah, and got started mainly as a again, like during COVID, when decided to go back to school at the University of the Arts up in Philadelphia, and they were doing mostly stuff online. But the semester that they were allowing like in-person classes again, audio electronics was one of the courses being offered, and it was a pretty small sect of the greater MBET program.
Hmm.
And they're kind of like, well, if you take this class, at the end of it, you'll be able to build yourself a distortion pedal or a fuzz pedal or a boost pedal. And I was like, well, a free guitar pedal sounds pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I took the class. It was like based on like stripboard stuff, which is my style of building now, and just really, really enjoyed the process for that. And then got into amplifier repair, guitar pedal repair, and was doing basically just repairs for a long time because there's nobody really down in Wilmington, Delaware that does amplifier repair. That's where we're based out of. Eventually, I had a customer bring me a Frantone, sorry, not a Frantone Peach Fuzz, a Dan Electro Cool Cat, which is based on the Frantone Peach Fuzz,
Right.
that needed to be repaired, and it's kind of like all surface mount, which basically just means that it's like soldered in an oven rather than being soldered by hand,
Yeah.
typically, unless you have that superpower.
I have to ask because my listeners are going to let us hear it if we don't. Do you mean the Dan Electro Fab Tone?
No, no, it's the let me grab it real
Yeah,
quick.
yeah, because I thought the Cool Cat was the chorus.
There is a Cool Cat chorus, but the original Cool Cat, uh,
Okay, it's listeners. If for those of you that are listening, not watching, it is one of the kind that have the like front mounted jacks instead of top mounted jacks. Not jacks, pots. The pots are on the front.
yeah,
Okay, yeah. I That's the series of Dan Electro. Like I know the food series really well. I know
hmm
those bigger boxed metal cased ones because I had all of those at some point. Those are the ones I didn't. Why pedal company stop reusing the name of pedals for
I know.
different things?
My goodness.
It's so frustrating. Okay, sorry, that was my confusion.
No, that's okay. That's okay. And there's a couple different versions of this also, which add to the confusion. So the version one is basically an exact clone of the Frantone Peach Fuzz, and so it has volume, tone, and fuzz controls. And then they got a C and D from Fran, and they kind of revamped the circuit a little bit. So the version two looks exactly like this, has the same name, doesn't say version two, but where it says tone, it says treble and bass.
Okay.
That's how you know the difference.
Interest. See, now you're gonna send me down a rabbit hole of those old Dan Electro pedals.
My gift to you.
I know that because I need that rabbit hole. I'm trying to buy less gear this year, John. That's my goal. So so you've got this whole like playing background long before you got into any of the pedal building. So I feel like I really want to explore that a little bit. So you grow up in New York, you're listening to Red Hot Chili Peppers, but then you're also really getting into this 20s and 30s music, which I think is funny because still one of my favorite covers of Robert Johnson is their cover of Red Hot.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, way too fast, but it's so good. So what drew you to that music? What made you want to start playing that? How'd you get there from Red Hot Chili Peppers and Blue Oyster Cult?
So there's actually an even further segue to getting to the 1920 stuff. So in New York again, gigging as a bass player, doing lots of recording sessions, hoping to eventually like get a late night band gig.
Uh-huh.
I didn't leave New York until I was probably about 22 or 23. I joined the army band,
Okay.
which sent me down to Sierra Vista, Arizona, which is like a really small town, maybe about 20 miles or so from the border. And one of the other musicians in that army band was a guy named Ron Hinkle, who's in the plectrum, the banjo Hall of Fame
Wow.
as a plectrum banjo player. But he was in the army as a clarinet player, and being musicians outside of work, a lot of us want to continue to play music and do gigs at bars outside of work. And so he was interested in having like a traditional jazz band that was playing 20s, 30s, and 40s music, and he was looking for somebody younger to teach banjo. And so again, like being in the middle of nowhere, really loving music, I was like, I'll take free banjo lessons from a guy in the Banjo Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Kind of seems like a no brainer, you know?
Yeah. And I did a quick open tab in Google. Listeners, Ron Hinkle has a blog called The Banjo Snob, which I'm going to leave open and read later because that sounds like super fun. I love the idea of a banjo snob. So you got into it via banjo, dude. It's so interesting because having grown up where I did, where blues is king, and everybody flocks to Clarksdale, Mississippi, for the blues history and the legacy. So to me, it's kind of a natural extension to get into 20s and 30s music. So hearing that you had to go to the Army and go to Arizona to get into like claw style or banjo styles. I always say claw hammer because that's a style I'm most familiar
Yeah.
with. Uh, it's really really rad. You're doing that. So you join the Army. You go learn banjo. How long were you in the Army?
4.5 years. So I
Four.
did like a contract and then an extension, so that way they would move me. My wife was still living in New York while I was in, or girlfriend at the time, was still living in New York while I was in Arizona, and kind of used signing an extension to get closer to her as an excuse to be in for a little bit longer. So I
Yeah,
ended up doing 4.5 years.
very cool. So you come back to the Northeast, I take it, at that point.
I guess technically, it was Richmond, so
Okay.
mid-Atlantic esque.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's the South according to the census. It's fine.
Oh, cool, cool.
So, what was the music scene there? Do you get there and you start playing a whole bunch immediately? Was that what the scene like there?
So in Virginia, it was more. That's kind of like where I. That's where I left the army.
Hmm.
So I got out, was stationed at Fort Lee, and kind of decided I want to start doing solo gigs, and so I was doing a lot of stuff like libraries and coffee shops and old folks' homes. I got more into like singing and playing the banjo and playing. Got into ukulele at that time also, so I was kind of doing the whole gamut of like 20s, 30s trad, or trying to.
Yeah,
Um, and then was also going to like the jazz jams, um, which was like more, they have VCU there, which has a pretty good jazz program. So a lot of guys that are playing bebop, and that sort of thing, but still, mostly gigging in the jazz vein, not doing very much like popular music at that time.
yeah. I feel like guitarists who have just always lived in whatever like guitar sphere they live in,
Yeah.
whether that's the blues guys. I think blues guys is a weird like. I should say the blues rock guys who only really ever think about their electric guitar, or like the pop punk and the punk and all the rock and roll guys who are just like, and girls who are just guitar, 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 guitar.
Yeah.
That traditional scene, and you saw it a lot in the blues, in like the older blues before the real influence of rock and roll in it. So everyone played so many different instruments. Like, and you go and you hear people think someone like Sadler Vaden changing guitars every song, that's a lot of guitars. Well, you should go see an hour and a half set of someone playing 20s music where literally every song they're playing, not just a different guitar, a different instrument entirely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so rad. I've been on this Gatemouth Brown kick lately, and I'm dead set, listeners. Yeah, I said this on I don't remember if I said it on Facebook or Threads, but Gatemouth Brown was playing rock and roll long before Ike Turner or Chuck Berry. Like he put out "Mary Is Fine" in 1949, and that's a rock and roll tune all day long.
Yeah.
But he also was a super accomplished fiddle player. Like that's just what you did. And so I'm always in awe of these musicians like yourself who are like, no, I picked up banjo and then I picked up ukulele and then I picked up like bass and I picked up this, and it's like whatever you need, I'm playing it. I got you.
I think it's cool. What amazes me is the guys that do like something completely different. Like I have friends that are great guitar players, but then it's like they'll play accordion, they'll play bouzouki, they'll play like tin whistle. And it's just like, at least, my excuse is that banjo's not that far from guitar.
It's really not.
You play them both with a pick, but like tin whistle, come on, man.
Yeah, it's a man. I played recorder, and it was because I was in school, and like most people had to learn or did learn whatever recorder in like elementary school or whatever. I didn't. That was not a part of my education. I got to college getting my music degree and had to learn recorder.
That's
And I was like,
awesome.
this is the most god awful sound I've ever heard. There's no reason for me touching this instrument. Yeah, so I had to take, okay, I should take this back. I didn't have to take because of my degree path, but they have like woodwind methods and string methods, and like you take these classes where if you're going to be an educator in music, you need to have like the base understanding of how to play these instruments because you're going to have to help a student at some point. And so I did some of that to learn, like I learned a little clarinet, I learned a little cornet, and like immediately after it was done, I dropped it all. I was like, do not have time to be good at this. And like, I'm not a tenth of the guitarist I want to be. How do I
Yeah.
have time to focus on this?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's good. It's a good thing, good skill to have. I've been trying to, over the last about year and a half, I've been trying to learn pedal steel.
Dude, that is a tough instrument.
I can't do the dance. I can't do the dance. Awesome. So you're in Virginia, you're playing music. What prompted the move back further north? It's just getting back closer to home.
Yeah. So my wife and I are both originally from New York City, and just kind of decided to split the difference. She wasn't feeling her job down in Virginia very much anymore, so we split the difference and ended up in Wilmington.
Yeah. So what's the gigging scene like there in Wilmington?
I think it's great. Wilmington has a ton of amazing local bands. Venues are maybe like lacking a little bit. We're kind of going through a period where a couple of the main ones have just closed, but some new stuff is opening up. And then we're close enough to Philadelphia, DC, and New York City that those are all pretty easily accessible, and Baltimore.
Yeah. So how, because I have, we talked about this actually just, privately. I've been to Wilmington. I've been to the, I can't remember the name of the blues festival there. Riverside? I don't remember. But I've been to it. Actually, I got to tell you a story. The greatest crime against blues I've ever witnessed was at that music festival.
Oh,
Yeah. That is the music festival where when I got to the gate to buy the pass to get in, they were selling harmonicas at the gate. I'm sorry. Do not give harmonicas to every person that walks into a blues festival. I once, at the club I used to work at, we had an artist who came through that in their contract, it says no one in the audience may have a harmonica.
that's amazing.
Because harmonica players, if you are listening to this podcast, I do love you, but do not start playing harmonica in the crowd while somebody else is on stage playing music and playing along to them. That is rude AF. Please don't do it.
Have
But
you
yeah,
ever have you ever seen that happen?
yes. Oh my gosh, yes. All the time. It's the reed equivalent of the tambourine. Have you
Yeah,
ever been playing a gig and someone in the audience randomly has a tambourine? I hope that's happened to you. I hope that's
I
not just me.
haven't.
Yeah, dude. It's a thing that happens, and it is. You ever played a gig where the audience starts clapping along in time?
Yeah.
How good are they at staying on time?
No,
They're
not
not.
great at
Now,
all.
now add a tambourine. It's that experience. It's entirely that experience. And harmonica is worse because now they have melody, sort of.
Or the idea of melody.
Yeah, they have the idea of melody. It put me off the instrument for a long, long time, just entirely. I do own one now. I'm not very good at it, and so I would never think to take that and just to play in the audience along with. It's like that's what being at home and listening to records is for.
Yeah.
Don't do that live. Anyway, I digress. All right, so you start learning all this stuff. And so this is where we talk about your pedals. I've got your Smalls fuzz, which is a silicon fuzz face style circuit. Having a lot of fun with that. I need some more time to sit down and just play pedals in general. I feel like the last 2 months have vanished.
Yeah.
It's just holidays and then New Year and then NAM, and it's just like, where is time? So a lot of your pedals are based on classic circuits, at least initially based. Where do you find new things you're working on, or do you have new things you're working on, or you just kind of I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with this, other than you just kind of like think up ideas you'd like to have, and then you decide to build it, and hey, let's offer that.
Yeah, I guess I just kind of wait for inspiration to strike, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
And yeah, kind of like take a classic circuit, usually try and build it pretty straight up the first time, figure out what parts of it I like, what parts of it I don't like as much. Then that's like where the modifications start coming in. Like with the Smalls fuzz, it's a great sounding circuit on its own. It's kind of based on the old Sam Ash fuzzes.
Well, yeah, that's right.
And so if you build one of those pretty straight up, kind of the issue ends up being a lack of volume and a tone control. It doesn't really work that well. So to fix that, what I decided to do, the tone control is completely revamped, and then added like a silicon boost stage at the end to get the volume up, and that just ends up giving you, I think, at least like more. You get more headroom. You get like a more noticeable. I'm a big knob twiddler when I'm playing. Like
Yeah.
I love cleaning up fuzz pedals and overdrive pedals. So having like all that extra volume on top makes the cleanup more noticeable, in my opinion. So that's kind of how I start with pedals.
Yeah, I gotcha. And so I was looking at your website earlier and looking at a few things you've done. Like I think right now all of the stuff that's currently in your line, you have 4 pedals currently in your line, is that correct?
Yeah, so I have three. I kind of have like different stages of pedals, I guess. I have like pre-production ones that are kind of like pedals that I'm testing out if people will actually buy. And so those are basically just going to be like hand stamped in a plain color enclosure, whether that's like right now I think we have the Bobby shorts up, and that's just a plain aluminum enclosure, hand stamped with the JFET booster built into it. So that's like pre-production. And so I'll probably make like 5 of those, and if the 5 sell, then have like a real graphic made for it and do like a run of 12. But the main ones are going to be the Smalls fuzz is our newest one, and then we have the Awkward Mustache and the Dual Transistor fuzz, which are kind of our two like flagship pedals.
Yeah. So I did get to hear the awkward mustache at not only at Fretboard Summit. I almost said NAM because I just keep saying NAM. It's inhabited my life the last few weeks.
Yeah,
But Scott from the Effects Loop grabbed one from you, and so when we went back, I was crashing with him for Fretboard Summit. We went back and played it, in a space where we could actually hear things that were going on
yeah,
a little bit more. And so that's a really rad circuit. Talk a little more about that. What's that sort of based on?
sure. So the Awkward Mustache came to life because when I was mainly a repair shop, just still do a bunch of repairs. I had a customer bring me one of these Dan Electro Cool Cats.
Hmm.
And they're all surface mount on the inside, which basically means that they're soldered like via an oven or like a solder fountain.
Yeah.
So they're really difficult to repair unless you have that superpower, which unfortunately I do not. Hand soldering surface mount components. So I found a schematic online and told the customer, if you're really patient with me, I can probably just build this for you on strip board. And so a couple months later, finished it up, made one for him, made one for me. Let a couple of my friends try it. People really, really liked it. And that's kind of how the Awkward Mustache came to be. Ended up doing a couple mods to it that's not included on the Cool Cat or the Fran Tone, which is the tone defeat, which I always love for Big Muff. That way you get rid of the mid scoop. And then kind of what I'm calling the Super Switch, which is kind of stolen from the Super Tone Bender,
Yeah.
which is just they're clipping diodes before the last gain stage. And so in a Super Tone Bender, they're soft clipping. On the Awkward Mustache, they're hard clipping. So you get more of like a gated, kind of really aggressive chainsaw texture.
See, super rad sounding, way outside my wheelhouse.
Yeah,
Not my normal thing at all. And then the other pedal in your line is the dual transistor fuzz.
yeah. And so that I made. One of my friends brought over the LAN devices HP2. I don't know if you
Yeah.
ever played that before.
I've never played one. I've seen the pictures, heard all about it, but I've never played one.
Yeah, it's real cool. It's like a harmonic percolator, and so played it. Really, really loved how it sounded. Was kind of curious about what the circuit looks like, and saw it wasn't that many parts, and that I had most of the parts in stock. And so just again decided to build it. The original ones that I was making just had like a clipping diode switch, which I think the LAN devices has, and is a pretty common mod for percolators because they're again it's an old circuit. Doesn't have a ton of volume necessarily. So depending on the diodes that you use, it can sound pretty close to unity even at maximum volume.
Yeah. I've got I only have one pedal based on the harmonic percolator or kicking around, and it's one from Brainia Effects that I bought from him a bunch of years ago. And I really, really love that thing. It's a circuit that I think gets there's a lot of mystique around it
Yeah.
because of the use of it, but not a lot of people have actually tried it. But I feel like there's been a resurgence in that circuit in the last few years that people are starting to get interested in it again. Steve Albini famously used it on like everything he ever did.
Yeah.
So people kind of, the people that know, but now it's starting to become a little more common. I'm kind of excited to see that. So right now it's all like fuzzes, and I think of the harmonic percolator as a little fuzz tangent. Like it gets fuzzy, but it's not like fuzz. It's not what a lot of people think of as fuzz.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I call it a dual transistor fuzz because the shortened name DTF is funny.
Yeah, I love that.
But like in conversation, I would consider it more of a germanium preamp.
Yeah, that's the way I think of it. I use it almost like just a tone shaper, not a fuzz pedal. At least the
Yeah.
one I have. I can only really speak to the one I have that's based on that. But yeah, it just how people talk about cranking an amp to get all the extra harmonics and whatnot, but then still playing clean
Yeah.
or sort of clean, not really. Now it can get fuzzy, crank it up, it's going to do the thing, but that's the way I like to use it.
Yeah, I think it's a great circuit because I mean, one I've played probably about 4 or 5 and they all sound wildly different. And then kind of like as a builder or like a DIYer or experimenter, it's a circuit where you can toss in almost whatever transistor you want and it will work.
Hmm. That is not the case in a lot of fuzzes.
Yeah. But yeah, I think it's nice that it's an easy circuit for everybody to kind of put their own unique voice on it.
Yeah.
Like our buddy Spooky Circuits makes a great one. The Mask Audio one is awesome, and I think ours is cool too.
Yeah,
We
no,
kind
I'm excited to try it. I'm sure you'll have it. Are you coming to Fretboard Summit again this year?
planning to.
Okay, good. I'll play it a bunch then. What I'm really curious about, so we've talked about your products, and listeners, I promise it's not a commercial. Just really should check it out. I love talking about all the, especially small builders when I get them on, especially when they have a line that we can literally go through the entire lineup very quickly. It's not something I do all the time, but I really want to kind of talk about, because this is a conversation I've been having with small builders. If you're okay with getting into, how has business been the last couple of years? You're a new company, you're just starting out. Um, and you sort of caught the backside of the boom of COVID,
Yeah.
the backside of COVID, that big boom we saw in 20 and 21 and the beginning of 22, and then it started to dip, which is about when you really got started. So
Yeah.
how's it been starting a new small business doing this?
So I think that I kind of like in my mind, Voltic is divided up into two parts. There's the repair side and there's the pedal building side. And so it's kind of good in that the repair side is basically always busy.
Yeah.
And that kind of partially funds the pedal builds. But it's I would say that I always have a great reception. Like doing like people love to see like the person building pedals in person, and getting to try out the pedals in person, and like hearing like the thought process that went into building it, like why you chose the transistors that you did, why you chose the artwork. And so those events for us, like if people see it in person, they love it, and we typically sell out or get pretty close to selling out.
Yeah.
Um, but as far as like just like online sales, um, the market is so saturated. It's really hard to break through on YouTube, to break through on Instagram. We've been doing some like Instagram lives when we've been building or repairing, and people like again like putting a face to the name, and so that's been super helpful. But
Yeah.
I think it's great. I think that despite the market, and I think that Josh Scott talked about this, despite the market being saturated, like people building things is never a bad thing. Like more people should know how stuff is made.
I totally agree with that. And that's sort of the idea of this podcast, especially when I have builders on. Now when I have musicians on or other content creators, it's a different conversation.
Yeah.
But when I have builders on, like it feel like it's so important for people interested in something to know the people who build it, because we live in this small niche where everybody knows everybody. They
Yeah.
really do. And no company, I'm going to use air quotes, air quotes, is as big as you think it is.
That was like the biggest shock to me. So last year was our first year like going out and doing shows. And like the size of most companies was incredibly shocking to me. Like at Fretboard Summit, we shared a table with Brown,
Yeah.
and Brown amplification is everywhere.
Yeah, yeah.
I was like, this has got to be like 50 people, and it's like Brown is 3 people.
Yeah, Brown is 3 people.
It's great, and the same thing with like Eventide
Mhm.
is like a dozen people.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it was just totally amazing to just.
One that blew my mind in the same vein is when I had Angelo and Terry from Maris on the
Mm,
podcast. Maris is 3 people,
that's insane.
right?
Yeah.
It's truly insane. And so I actually was having this conversation literally yesterday as we're recording with Curtis Novak from Novak Pickups. Curtis Novak, that's a big name at this point. A lot of people know who Curtis Novak is. He has name recognition. He's still, one dude, and with some part-time help. I think he's just got a couple of part-time help to build some things.
Yeah.
But it's like even Boss, the biggest name in this industry as far as pedals go, that's the biggest name. They're way smaller than you would think they are. I don't have numbers on them, but it's much, much, much smaller than anyone would think it is. And so I think it's really important to hear these stories and to talk about the business and talk about the people that make the things, because ultimately people buy from people.
Yeah.
The whole company thing, yes, but you want to know the folks who make the things in this tiny, tiny industry that we're in, because you make, and I mean this like in the absolute most loving way possible, you make pedals that are based on other pedals that have been around. And so does everyone else. So when you're deciding between whose circuit, yes, you want the one that sounds like you want it to sound, but there's an awful lot of things that can get you close. I remember Scott from the FX Loop, who we mentioned earlier. It wasn't this year's Fretboard Summit, or last year's, it was the year before. When I came home, I borrowed a bunch of overdrive pedals from him
Hmm.
when I was leaving, and he was like, here, here's like 7 that I'd not had or didn't have a version of. Try them out, send them back to me when you get a chance. And so I did. I brought them home and I laid them all out on my desk, and I started plugging and unplugging and da-da-da-da. And I'm like, why do these all sound basically the same to me?
Yeah.
And I had this like moment where I was like, these all sound the same to me. And ultimately it comes down to sound. You want it to sound right, but then
Hmm.
also who makes it? Like, who is the person making this? Do I like the aesthetic too? I mean, there's some stuff I just will not own because of what it's called. I'm looking at you, Friedman amps. I love Dave Friedman. I love his amps, but I'm just not going to own something that's called some of the names that he calls his amps.
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen. And I'm okay with saying that. So it's really interesting that you mentioned that. It's all about just getting your name out there, building a relationship, people knowing who you are and that you're building things. Because in a way, this industry is I have so many things I want to say that I'm working really hard not to sound derogatory when I say it to people like myself. In a way, the people who buy a bunch of pedals aren't buying them as tools. They're buying them like trading cards.
That's totally fair.
Do you get a lot of that? You feel a little bit of that in this industry? As someone who's also, we talked about this before, you're also a guy who buys a bunch of pedals. You've got a bunch
Yeah.
of pedals.
Yeah, I'm totally a guy that buys a bunch of pedals. So I'll say, I mean, there's definitely times where things feel that way, but I think mostly, I think it's like a small pedal builder. So like Voltic is just me. I do all the building. I have a friend Austin that comes out and does like shows with me, and then Jamie does all of our artwork and design. I think just remembering that you're a part of a local community is really really important, and like supporting the people that buy your pedals. Go out to their shows, buy their vinyls or their CDs or their tapes or their T-shirts. Rainbow Records, best record store in Delaware,
That's awesome. It might be the only record store in Delaware.
baby.
Y'all, it's a joke. Delaware has 3 counties. It's small.
But I think that remembering that is super important. We have a ton of local guys that have bought our pedals. There's people that we've gifted our pedals to, that we just like love their music, and so like I know that those are getting played all the time. But if you buy a pedal online, send their builder a message, let them know that their stuff was cool. Yeah, a lot of times I don't typically get an email back. I try and email like about a week after somebody buys something online. Don't always hear back. But recently sent one out to New Zealand and heard back from the guy. He said it was the best fuzz pedal he ever played. So that
That's
was
awesome.
That was freaking awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the key. I think building community, and it's similar. It's what I try to do around this podcast. We build community. I'm not out here like I tell people who are they're a little hesitant to come on the podcast. Words are hard for me today. They're a little hesitant to come on the podcast. I'm like, look, I'm not here doing gotcha journalism. I'm not going to throw any like hard questions at you. I'm not going to ask you on current world affairs.
Yeah.
We're just here to chat and have a good time and build community. And that's the whole point is like just getting to know and chatting all the folks that do the things that we love. Because I'm really trying to focus. It's getting harder, but I'm really trying to focus on less negativity, more positivity, the things I love, not tribalize around things I hate. I feel like this entire industry is that. We all love guitar. I posted a thing on Threads yesterday, right? I posted, and this is just fact. And I said that I need to come clean. I hate the song Reelin' in the Years.
I was going to bring that up.
Yeah, I hate that song. I want to like it because so many people love that song, and like some of my favorite bands have covered it.
Yeah.
And I hate their versions too because I just don't like the song. And I learned the intro. I learned half the solo because I felt like it's one of those you're supposed to. I couldn't play them right now if you paid me because that was a couple years ago, right?
Yeah.
And I definitely didn't keep playing. So it's not there at the front of my brain. And I don't like that song. I didn't say it sucked. I didn't say it was awful. I didn't even say I hate Steely Dan because I don't hate Steely Dan. I just don't like that song and I don't know why. And for the most part, people were like, oh, that's fine. That's cool. If you don't like it, you don't like it. But then some people get really, really upset that I didn't like something. And I'm like, one dude's like, you should delete this. And I'm like, why? And so it's like, and I'm like, I stated an opinion. It's my opinion. I hate the song.
People feel really strongly about the Dan.
Yeah, they really do. And that's the thing is we're in this industry where people like to love to hate things.
Yeah.
I don't love to hate things. It doesn't make me feel good to hate anything. And I hate that song. I really wish I didn't. Because I really wish I liked it because I'd love to get whatever it is everyone else is getting out of it. So but they love to just shit on things. And I'm like, why? What good is that doing anyone to just crap all over something that you just don't like?
Yeah.
Now, if someone does something awful and they're a terrible human being, please crap all over them. Like, don't be terrible people. There's a reason I close this podcast every episode with the phrase I close out with that we'll say here in a few minutes. We're getting close to that. That's fine. You'll hear it. But we're all just in here trying to have fun. Guitar is fun. It was meant to be fun, right? Yeah. Sorry. That was.
Well, that's why it's called playing guitar.
Yeah. Nobody's working guitar. Actually, some people are.
Despite how it looks sometimes.
Yeah. I've played gigs where it was work.
Yeah.
I'm just going to be honest. I've played some shows where it was entirely work. So, as we do, we're starting to get towards the end of the episode. So you're repairing amps, which is huge. I'm just getting into doing that. Actually, we've been chatting a whole bunch. You've been walking me through some stuff I've been working on. I did get an Ampeg SVT repaired and completely operable, which was great, even though it was perplexing me with one issue. It was tubes, y'all. It ended up being tubes.
That's what we said, right?
Yeah, it's almost always tubes. Anyway, that's exactly what it was. You and like two other amp builders who were like, oh, you've done this, this, and this. It's tubes. I was like, okay.
Unfortunately, they were the most expensive tubes.
Oh, yeah. No, unfortunately. And that's why I sold it. I was like, when I sold it, I was like, tubes, it will work just like it is. And it may work for years like it is, but it's going to need new tubes. Desperately need freaking 65, 50 giant bottles of, it's ridiculous. $400 set of 6.
I will never financially recover from this.
Right. I'm like, the tubes would be more than I paid for the amp. So anyway, neither here nor there. Repair business is big. I'm really, really, really glad you're doing it. Are you gigging any now? Now that you're doing the repairs, you're doing the building, do you have any time to gig?
Yeah, so I have a singer-songwriter that I play with, Emmett Druding, up in
Okay.
Philadelphia. And we have a monthly gig at a place called the Mermaid Inn that's up in Mount Airy.
What a
Um,
great name for an inn.
yeah, it's such a cool spot, man. It's been around since I'm sure somebody will correct me, but I think like the late 1800s, and it was originally like a rugby club, and now it's a bar, but it's like a bar with like no TVs, terrible lighting. It's like it's super just like neighborhood dive bar. It is
It's my
awesome.
favorite kind of bar.
If there's not a live musician there playing, there's no music in the bar.
Have you ever
It's
been
cool.
to we're gonna take this for I think the last segment here. Have you ever been to Lafitte's down in New Orleans?
No.
Okay. Lafitte's the old blacksmith shop. I don't know what's actually called. I call it just Lafitte's. It's one of the 3 buildings that managed to survive like all the fires that New Orleans had, right? So it's one of the oldest buildings still in New Orleans. I think it survived the fires because it was a blacksmith shop at one point. And legend has, I don't know if it's true, y'all, but they claim that Jean Lafitte, the famous privateer and pirate, owned it at one point. It was like a pirate haven. It actually has operated longer as a bar, way longer as a bar than it ever did as a blacksmith shop. But it's still got like the stone forge in the center that they just use as a fireplace now.
Yeah.
The first time I ever went to New Orleans, and it's up on the north end of Bourbon. Like you get away from all the tourist craziness down in the south part of the quarter. And New Orleanians hate when I use cardinal directions because the quarter isn't north and south. It's like tilted, but whatever. So I apologize if you're a New Orleanian who's just losing your mind right now. But it's on the north end of Bourbon. And it was dark, like tabletops had candles on them. It didn't have a jukebox. It didn't have like the only real lighting was behind the bar,
Yeah.
like where they could see what they were doing. And it really wasn't bright. And it had a piano that actually had someone playing it occasionally. It was the perfect bar. It was my favorite place in the entire world. Then they got a jukebox and they got lighting and they turned it into like a college hang, it feels like. And I'm like, I hate every bit of it now.
Actually, I feel like I know the bar that you're talking about now, and every time that we walk past it, we do not belong. Yeah, I have my banjo on my back. That's like that place isn't for us.
Yeah, no, it's not now. But when I first went there, absolutely that place
Yeah.
was for you.
Yeah.
And so now that I hear of a bar that doesn't have TVs and the lighting is bad, and I'm like, now I need to go to the Mermaid Inn real bad. I haven't been to New York since 2006, so I might be due for a trip.
Yeah, come to the Philly Pedal Show.
Man, when is that? When is the Philly Pedal Show?
I don't think that there's a specific date for the next one, but I think
Okay.
they're going to try and do it like twice a year.
Oh.
Yeah, so we did one. Was it like December 8th?
Okay, so just did one.
Yeah, so I think they might like it might be like a May or June thing, and then again in December.
I tried to search Philly Pedal Show, and it sent me to the 2025 Philly Bike Expo. Not that kind of pedal.
It's close. Good effort, poor execution
Yeah, exactly.
on the part of Google.
Yeah, right. Freaking AI ruining everything. Yeah, so I love that. And sorry, I totally interrupted your story to tell a story about great bars because those are my favorite bars. I actually don't want music in a bar if it's not live music.
I could agree with that.
I'm one of those people. So, well, John, tell everyone where they can find you because I'm going to be trying to remember to grab a bunch of these links and stick them down in the description below or in the show notes. Make sure to check those out. Where all can people find you?
So they can find us at volticelectronicdevices.com. We have a store there where if you want to check out any of our pedals, we have gut shots for everything so you can see what they look like on the inside. They're all built on strip board. It's kind of our product offering, for lack of a better term. They can also find us on Instagram at Voltic Electronic Devices, or just type in Voltic and we'll come right up. Feel free to send us a message anytime. I'm the one that responds.
Oh, you mean you don't have an intern to do that?
I know, man. If you're in Nashville, you can check out our pedals at Eastside Music Supply. If you're in Los Angeles, you can check them out at Caveman Vintage Music. And if you are in around Lancaster, you can check them out at Tone Tailors, Lancaster in Pennsylvania.
Very cool.
Or Small's Music Shop in Wilmington, Delaware.
Really?
Which
is that where the name for the fuzz came from? See, I was really hoping it was a Sandlot reference.
No. I mean, the name for the maybe by by virtue of the store being named.
Yeah, maybe that's why the store is called Smalls.
Yeah.
Because they're killing me.
We'll get further clarification.
We'll ask him. All right, y'all. Thank y'all for hanging out. Thank y'all for listening. John, thank you for coming on the show, dude.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was a blast.
Yeah. So we're going to record a little more over on Patreon. If you want to support the show, you've already heard this, but you can go over to patreon.com/40watt podcast, and $5 a month gets you extra content. It gets you behind the scenes. Also, you heard in the top of the show, because I definitely remember to record that in the pre-roll, that this week's episode is also sponsored. Well, not this episode, but the NAMM coverage that you've been seeing is sponsored by Sweetwater. We're giving away a guitar. There's still time to enter as you are listening to this episode. I don't know the exact date this episode goes out, but the contest is open until February 3rd. There is a link below. Click that. If you're listening to this after February 23rd, the link is still there because I'm way too lazy to go back and remove it, but it's not going to work. So there's that. In the meantime, y'all, thanks for hanging out. We're going to go over to Patreon. Be good to yourselves, be kind to each other, and make some noise.